Welcome to OpenHive.JS, the podcast for all things JavaScript. We are your hosts, James Nell and Matteo Collina. For this episode, we are sitting down with Liz Parody, Head of Developer Relations at NodeSource.
The conclusion of creating a community will be build, then engage, and finally grow.
Liz is a community-focused software engineer, event speaker and organizer of events like JSConf Colombia, Pioneras developers, and Startup Weekend. We have a slightly different episode today, with a little less about coding, but lots about how to build a community, the importance of tech communities and women in tech. Let's get into it.
It's great talking to you again, Liz. I know you've done quite a bit with organizing in the community and getting things going. I mean, I gotta say, Colombia, when I was down there, one of the things that struck me was just how absolutely vibrant and connected the JavaScript and open source community was down there. And I know you've been involved with that quite a bit. Why don't you speak a little bit about kind of, what the community's been doing down there, and what your involvement is.
Yes, as you and pretty much everybody knows, Medellin, used to be the most dangerous city in the world about 30 years ago. So Medellin is a city that has quite a history. And a few years back, maybe around 10 years ago, everything started to change for the better. We wanted Medellin and the governors and everybody, they wanted to transform the city and the image we had. So they start focusing a lot in technology. A lot of communities start rising. Like key people just decided to create meetups and to create conferences, international conferences. So because we had this very bad past, like we just wanted to leave everything behind, and the community just started growing and growing, and Medellin focused a lot in technology. Even Medellin won the prize of the most innovative city in the world, but in 2013. And they've been focusing a lot of infrastructure, technology, enterprises, innovation. They bring a lot of companies outside and they give like investments. And even in South America, Colombia last year was the country that received the most investment, more than Brazil and more than Mexico, because we have some very big startups. As you mentioned, James, there is a lot of like the community is very vibrant, but I think it's also because the past that we have and we just want to leave everything behind. So we really want to transform things.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And it's a fantastic story. I mean, I was down there for NodeConf Colombia last year, and it was just, yeah, it was the thing that struck me more than anything else was just how passionate everybody was down there about the technologies and the level of innovation that was really happening down there.
Yeah.
It's fantastic to see. So, what have you been up to here recently? I know that unfortunately, because of the circumstances with COVID and stuff, NodeConf Colombia was unfortunately.
I'm so sad about it. I didn't get to come the last few years, and I'm really, really sad.
Pretty much all the conferences and everything got canceled, every single thing. And some of them are moving online, but most of them they were just canceled. Like the biggest one, like JSConf, like PyCon, like JConf, like all of them were just canceled and moved for next year. But the work is still, and when there is like online conferences and online meetups, a lot of people show up, and so that's also quite good.
So I have a question. Do you think that online events bring the same level of engagement compared to an in-person event, especially for community building purposes?
No, definitely not. Like, unfortunately, the event, like seeing people face to face and be able to see the reactions and the interactions is super different online because when you're in an event, you can just be sitting there and watching a conference, but you also meet people and all of that. But meeting people in online conferences is like very, very difficult. And also, like sometimes in online conference, maybe you can just attend to one or two talks, while you in a conference, you can be there for long hours and you can watch many talks. For example, in Colombia, like when people go there, the rooms are always full. So a lot of people go to most of the talks. But in online conference, I've seen that they don't participate in all of the talks, maybe one or two or three. Yeah. So it's definitely not the same because I also think one of the most important things about conferences is the people, like the networking you create, the connections you make, the I don't know, the job opportunities. I remember I got one of my first jobs in technology was because I went to a technology conference and I started meeting a lot of people, and one of them was my boss, and I started talking like, yes, I'm interested in technology, like, and then I just got the job. So yes, I think the presence, like personal conference is better, but yeah.
I think at least I think three people, all the three people in this call got a job at the conference. I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm
Pretty
just.
much, yeah. No, I have to agree with you. It's the online conferences. I mean, it's great that we can do them. It's great that we can connect. It works, but it definitely does not replace that. Being in person, sitting in the room, seeing people face to face and having those conversations, and really that the hallway track, that going out to the booths and having those conversations for me has always been the most valuable part.
For me, going to conference is good. It's also very, like, there's a lot of advantages also in online conference. Like, more people can attend. There's a lot of free conference. There is a really good talks. So it's not all bad. Like, there's a lot of good things that we can rescue from online conference. But I still prefer, like, like normal conference when you can just go.
Let's in the future. Let's just do where all the talks are all online. You can watch them, whatever, and then just have the conference where we just all get together and
Yeah,
talk.
that sounds fun. I like that. Yeah.
So I know that thinking about what builds a successful community is something that you've given a lot of thought to. What are the most important things that you think Liz, that need to be considered when building a successful community?
Okay, so I've been thinking about this, and there is like a few steps that are definitely necessary to create a successful community. Is the first step would be to take the initiative, like the first steps, because for example, 10 years ago there was no communities, there was nothing in Colombia, nothing. So there was like four people, like literally four people, transformed the entire ecosystem because they were like, okay, let's create meetups. So they created the first meetup in Bogota, and then they created another meetup in Medellin back in 2011. Now there is more than 200 meetups all around Colombia, when 10 years ago were zero, and there is more like 20 international conferences, going from nothing to be one of the most vibrant communities in all Latin America, and I would say even the world. It took the leadership and the initiative of some folks. So taking the initiative, I think, is important. Also, another thing would be, which is the code of conduct. Every conference and every community has a code of conduct, and also a mechanism to enforce it, because it's not only, yes, this is are the rules, but also like to make the rules work. For example, I remember in JSConf Europe last year, I had an encounter with a man that he was asking like too many personal questions, and it was just like too much. And I told the organizers, and they enforce the code of conduct, and they basically kick him out of the conference, and he will never be allowed to go to JSConf Europe again. So having a code of conduct and some rules, I think, is super important, and also to have an inclusive community. Another thing that I have found is that it's very important to treat your speakers well, because as James, you see here, like, then you become ambassadors. If James and Mateo and more people from the Node.js world comes to Colombia, they see the community, then they will go out and talk well about this, so it will keep growing. So that's why it's important to treat the speakers or treat the people that are collaborating very well. Like, we try that the people that comes here leaves happy and have like good impression about the country and the community and all. Another thing that I think is very important when building communities is legitimize your community or event by building trust, and also to be responsible with money, because the communities here, they already have a reputation, they already have a history. Recognized speakers have come to Colombia, even Brendan Ike, the creator of JavaScript, and others important conferences out there have come to Colombia. So you start like building trust, and it's important to not lose that trust. For example, last year, it was this year. I think it was this year. Like NG Atlanta and NodeSource Atlanta. That was a event that a lot of people were invited. I don't know if you guys were invited to that, but at the
Yep.
end, it was like a big failure, and nobody will ever trust those conferences again or the people that organize it. So once that confidence is gone, it's like super hard to build that again. So it's very important to be responsible with money and use it well.
That one made me sad. That one ended up just being a total disaster all over the NG Atlanta. Once that trust is gone, it's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah, that was a big disaster. Another thing that I found like super important is to have a committed team, because people that you trust and that you can build things together, and like for example in the big conferences like NodeConf or JSConf, RubyConf, all of those big conferences, like we're expecting about 800 people, and we have a team. We have a team of 10 people. We just divide each task. Like for example, two people are in charge of communications, three of them on logistics, other of speakers, and others of sponsors. So we divide the task, and it's just a team that we really trust. So I think that's important to have like a very good organized team behind the conference. And even sometimes we become friends, like the organizers is just like a big family. So that's also very good. Another thing I would say is having like visibility, because no one will join your community or your meetup if they can't find it, right? So just to do advertising in social media, sending emails, having a web page, all of that, like you need to be easy to be found and to have like resources and be able to watch past conferences or past events, or if you have a community, like yes, your web page with all the meetups, be visible, basically be easy to find. Another thing would be people have to be aware that this is a volunteer job and is mostly unrecognized. I have spent hundreds of hours in community work, in conferences, in meetups, organizing the community. I organize Pioneras developers, which is one of the biggest community of women in tech in Colombia. And sometimes it's just hours and hours, and it's unrecognized. Nobody will like give you money for that or clap you. It's just, yeah, like it's a volunteer job, and it's good. It's good to put part of your time to give back. So I really like that.
Once upon a time, when I started in the industry, and I started going to the first few events in Italy, it was like I immediately jumped into the organizing side of things, mainly because I have been running tech events, helping out, not running myself. I've never been the main guy, or maybe a couple of times with NodeConf, but I have been around tech events maybe since 2009, something like that.
Hmm.
So I've been like on the organization side, okay, and maybe 2010, something like that. And I've been on organizing Ruby events, like all of them. And it's one of the things. It's that it helped me quite a lot, even though it was a huge amount of hours of totally thankless job and work.
Yeah.
It was the amount of contacts I could create,
Yeah.
and that heavily boosted my career. That was actually quite a journey for me, and that's why when I always go into conference, I try to act to some extent as a nub, so that I can, oh, okay, let me introduce you to this guy or this other person, so that I can always essentially spread joy and create
Hmm.
connections, and always from my own experience, even if it's thankless and nobody will say anything about it, if you spread good in the world, it will always come back.
this idea of these conferences and these community events and stuff, where the main benefit people get out of this is the connections that they make with other people, the opportunities that come from those connections, the opportunities to learn and grow or get a new job or whatever the kind of thing. But if you have this environment where somebody goes, a woman goes and is made to feel unsafe, then they can't leverage those benefits. They can't leverage those connections because they don't feel safe doing so. And
Exactly.
and it's just kind of, you know, this idea that you're putting this effort into it, and you're putting that, and you're working and building those connections, but then suddenly, oh, sorry, it's not safe, I can't do it. Then you just ended up really wasting your time, right? Needlessly. And it's just, I don't know. It's a thing that for me, it just keeps coming back to,
Yeah.
just the need for that safety.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And going back, it's like, yes, it's a volunteer job and it's mostly unrecognized, but at the same time, as Mateo mentioned, being part of communities, being able to build and speak at different events has also opened a lot of doors for me too, because it's not the same. Like, yes, I know how to code JavaScript, but it's different. Like, yes, I organize the biggest meetup for women. I organize different conferences. It gives you like more ways to you work.
I think I'm not gonna say all engineers. Most engineers, I would say, love to get lost in code for a while, but you can't overlook the importance of those
Yeah.
personal connections and the community connection, because it's going to get you much farther than just writing a good couple lines of code.
Yeah, exactly. That would be my other point, which would be creating impact. We just don't want to make technology. We want to make technology that creates impact and can benefit people. I don't know. For me, I believe if I work for a company that was building technology that would somehow harm the environment, or I wouldn't be able to work on that. Like, my principles wouldn't let me. But creating impact through technology, through communities, through conferences, for me, that gives me kind of a sense of purpose in my life. So for me, I want to help more people to accomplish great things because, for example, a lot of ladies and a lot of people in Colombia, they earn very little money, they don't travel, they're not well educated. But when we see these type of communities, it's like very poor people and very vulnerable people go to these conferences because we allow them, we give them scholarships and all, and it can change their lives forever. Like, my life was absolutely changed. Like, before being in technology, I didn't. I don't know. I would have like the typical Colombian job, and I wouldn't be able to travel, and I wouldn't be able to do like meet amazing people like you guys. So I want like other people to experience these kind of things. So creating impact is quite important for me.
Once upon a time, I was discussing with some folks, and we were talking about why somebody will join the Node.js community and spend time in improving that platform. And for me, it was like there are so many developers out there that are coming in and want to build websites and want to build JavaScript applications. And this is really accessible. And I can make this even more accessible. I can improve this platform versus other platforms that are not that easy to jump in and work with. So my primary reason for working with Node and keep working with Node was community, in fact. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yes, that's where open source come from. Like, it's the same. It's a lot of work. It's also mostly unrecognized, but it gives like a lot of impact. How many millions of people use Node.js? In NodeSource, we distribute the Node.js binaries, and just this year, 50 million people have downloaded it. So it's like the work of a few people have been impacted this year around 50 million people. So that has a huge impact working in open source.
Creating that impact, I don't think I've ever been happier writing code than when I know that this is something that is going to positively affect people, right? It's
Yeah.
always the projects that where you're just like, man, I don't really know if anyone's actually going to use this or if it's actually going to have any benefit. Those are the ones you never enjoy, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
yeah.
Another thing that I've considered that is super important is the quality of the content, because the content must benefit your audience. So you have to know your audience and create basically good quality content, good quality speakers, and also even not only the quality is important, but also the consistency is not the same if I do a meetup every 6 months that if I do a meetup like monthly or every 2 weeks, or podcast every month. This sense of consistency also start building a community and a reputation. So the quality and consistency of the content is quite important. Another thing, and I know Mateo and James, you both are very strong in this point, is to be willing to share your network and experience.
Yeah, this one's a big one for me. It really just comes back. I mean, if you're not willing to go out there and share that knowledge, you're really going to miss one of the things that really enriches your experience in this industry. I kind of look back on it as as people are learning a craft, right? If you're whether it doesn't matter if it's an artistic craft like sculpting or metalworking or whatever, right? You're building something, you're developing your techniques. People share those techniques. Like, here's how I built this, here's how I did this.
Yeah.
In this industry, it's really no difference, and we all come away better by sharing that information rather than just trying to keep it to ourselves. Well, I figured it out. Yeah, I guess you have to go figure it out on your own. That's just, it's better to share. So.
Yeah, I agree. And also because when you share something, it means that you actually know in depth what you're talking about.
And I will say, it does not matter how long you have been writing code or how long you've been in this industry. There's always something more for you to learn. And you might just be surprised that you learn that from somebody who's brand new.
Yeah, exactly.
Industry, right?
Like I remember my first conference. It was Empire.js in New York. That was my first international conference, and I've been writing code for literally like 3 months. It was like nothing. I just started playing with a very cool library of art, and it's called P5. So it was possible to create art using JavaScript, and I was very interested. And then I did one talk here in Medellin JS, and they really liked it because it was like fun, it was entertaining. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to apply to Empire JS, and I was accepted, and I was like, I can't believe it. Like, I've been coding for 3 months, and now I'm speaking internationally, like in a big conference. But it was a very terrifying experience, to be honest, but it was also very good. Like, yeah, like people were willing to listen to me, to what I have to say, like to create art using JavaScript. So that was super fun.
I think that it just really goes back to building that engagement, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much experience you have actually writing code. If you're out there talking about what you did and what you learned and what you can do, right, then you're engaging people's imagination. You're engaging, what they're thinking about their code, right? And you're sharing something
Yeah.
that it's adds value for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. Engagement is also super important because like creating an environment that can encourage people to share the knowledge, answer questions, connect with others, listen. Like it could be like in a conference or in a meetup or anywhere, but creating that engagement sometimes is not super easy. So engagement, that will be my next important thing. And one other thing that I'm passionate about and I really care, it will be making inclusion, accessibility, and diversity a priority because for me, I have always thought that people that are creating tech are creating the future, and we want a future that is diverse because that the future that represents everybody, not just a small group of people. So for me, giving scholarships for people in minorities or providing that diversity and that inclusion, it's very, very important.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I've seen a number of ways in which we have gotten a lot better, just as an industry. But pretty much everywhere I look, there's just so much more distance we need to cover on closing the gaps, pay gaps, particularly gender equality gaps and diversity gaps. I mean, it's just there's so much more we have to do that we have to continue making this a priority if we're going to make any progress.
And talking about women, this is a topic that I'm very passionate about because, well, I'm a woman and I'm also Latina. So I was researching a little bit. Women only hold like the 30% of jobs in computer science, and Latina women is less than 1% of those jobs. So there is a lot of gender inequality, and 5% of all the leadership positions in technology are held by women. But the pay gap is even worse because according to the UN Women across all regions, women are paid less than men. We all know that. The pay gap is estimated to be 23% globally. That is that women, we all earn 22% less for the same job that a man can do. It's just the same, but we just get paid less, 23% less because we're women, right? Like there is a lot of much freedom now, but it's still like a lot of things that have to be done.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's constantly thinking about what I can do to deal with this, and it really, most of the time it just ends up coming back, to whenever I see a conversation where, well, this isn't an issue, or this isn't this, or if I hear somebody say it's a pipeline issue again, I'm probably going to slap them. It really just comes down, to trying to have those conversations to get people to actually be aware of it and take it
Aware, yeah.
seriously.
Yeah, exactly. So I would think the first step would be make people aware. I 100% agree with that. But then I think the other step would be actually empowering them, empowering people to do that. So, for example, recently I just donated 2 computers to women in tech because they were in very vulnerable conditions, and I think it's better to give them the power to them to try them themselves, to give them, I don't know, food or whatever, because when you give them the power to learn, to educate, to be successful by yourself, that's like actually a long-term solution. So first will be awareness, the second will be like empowering.
Anybody out there that thinks, that, hey, this is supposed to be a tech podcast, why are you talking about this stuff? Because this is way more important than any tech that we have. There's a quote from a colleague of ours, Miles Boren's. APIs are going to be deprecated. Being human will not. If we don't sit here and really consider the human connection and human aspect of all this technology that we're involved in, and then there's just no point to us being involved in it. So
Exactly. I will have just like 2 more points about building a successful community. The next point will be growing, because
right.
it's not only about creating community, but you want that community to grow, right? So you have to pass the baton. And first, the 4 leaders that I mentioned before, they make sure to train other leaders so they can expand, right? And so that's also super important. At the end, it will be the conclusion of creating a community will be build, then engage, and finally grow. That's how you create a very successful community. Build with trust, with committed team, with all that. Engage with good content, quality content, with that has impact, that has visibility, and finally grow, because that's what you want to do. You don't want to, if you don't do anything, then the community disappear. We don't want that. Like, for example, we created Pioneras, which is Pioneras developers, the community for women in tech. And we pass the leadership once in a while because we want other women to be empowered and we want the community to grow. So growing is very important. And finally, I would say also another thing would be to just have fun, to enjoy yourself, to find creative ways to share knowledge, to meet people. And that would be what I think are the keys for building a successful community that could last in the long term and create impact.
It's an excellent list of points, and really, I really cannot think of another community out, really anywhere in the world that really stands out as a model for how to do this right than what you all have built there in Colombia. The level of engagement, the level of passion, the people that are involved. I mean, just every aspect of it really just comes down to you've done it right, and you're the model for doing, for anyone else who'd want to do this.
Thank you. I think we just really care, and we really want to leave the story behind, and we want to be seen with new eyes, like be able to transform lives, to transform a city. It's all about communities, I think, and about giving back and creating impact.
Well, I'm just looking at, we're coming up to the end of our time here. Liz, this has been absolutely fantastic conversation. I do want to just, leave a moment. Now, NodeSource, right? Head of developer relations with NodeSource. I know NodeSource has been going through quite a few, has gone through quite a few changes over the past, year or two.
So actually, things are going great at NodeSource. The new leadership, and going back to the core of why the company was created at the first place, like, it's just like incredible. Like, the team has always been amazing, and I'm very happy to work in NodeSource.
Well, that's excellent. I mean, yeah, it's been fantastic seeing the company and the folks, just really starting to thrive and get that passion back and really move forward. So I hope that things continue on that path.
Yeah, thank you. And how's everything going in Nearform?
Pretty good. It's we have been. I don't know if you've heard the news. We have been shipping quite a lot of helping out with the or part of with the fight against COVID.
Oh yeah, I've seen that, definitely. Yeah, you created an app for COVID tracking.
Yes. So it has been done. It has been deployed in Ireland, in Scotland, in a few states in the US. So it has been doing quite well. It's based on it's based on an open source core. It's called COVID Green. And it uses Node.js on the back end and React Native for the app itself. It's pretty nice. It's all JavaScript, so we should actually celebrate it.
Yeah, congratulations! I saw it. That's great.
So that's kind of been why we've been hitting the news at Nearform. The company's doing pretty well, I would say. It's just at one time we are doing something that is very public and very notable all over the world, so we're pretty proud.
That's great. How many users does it have, the app?
Oh, geez. And it depends on where it's at. So I think Ireland's up a couple, and like maybe just under 2 million or something like that.
Good.
New York, it's a few 100,000. So
awesome.
It varies based on where it's at, and like the Jersey app just launched today. The island of Jersey app just launched. So we have both the old and new Jerseys that are using it. So it really depends on where it's at and in terms of how it's being used.
Awesome.
Now I will say that the COVID Green, the open source project that spun off, this is under the Linux Foundation. That's actually being picked up by other jurisdictions that that Nearform has nothing to do with. So the app is having that impact and benefit, far beyond just what we're doing with Nearform, and that's just amazing to see. Mateo's being a bit modest, so the back end is using Fastify.
The framework.
Right, which
yes, okay.
Framework that Mateo launched there, and there hasn't even been a hiccup on that, so it really speaks. Fantastic framework.
Congratulations! Yeah, I have heard really good things about Fastify. So it's growing, and yeah.
Yes. Well, focusing on taking as a community first approach actually is helping the project quite a lot in growing it. So I'm pretty happy and pretty proud.
Awesome! Congratulations.
Well, Liz, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have as well.
Oh yeah, thank you so much.
So, folks listening, don't forget to listen to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or you can find other places to listen to us if you go to anchor.fm/OpenHive.JS. As always, it's been fantastic, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you so much. It was fantastic talking to you guys.
Bye, Liz. This has been another episode of OpenHive.JS, the podcast for all things JavaScript from Nearform.